Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third in the series of Prescribing Positivity. The Office of Health Ministry of the AME Zion Church invites members of varying health specialties to join us and share their expertise with our congregation and our communities. In February, we had the pleasure of interviewing two cardiologists about promoting better heart health. And last week, we interviewed a mental health specialist for Mental Health Awareness Month. Today, we're so happy to have two esteemed guests who will be sharing with us how we can reimagine a healthier diet. So without further ado, let me introduce our two guests. I'll be going alphabetically, and I'm honored to first present Mrs. Tempest Harris Chance. Welcome, Tempest.
Thank you.
Tempest is a native of rural West Tennessee, where eating fresh-grown foods and essential agricultural skills go hand in hand. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Food Science and Master of Public Health from Georgia Southern. She has dedicated the last 16 years to working in federally funded child nutrition programs such as the WIC program as a nutritionist, regional food and nutrition coordinator for Head Start, and district training and development manager for Douglas County School Nutrition Program in Georgia. As the procurement compliance specialist at the Department of Early Care and Learning, Tempest provides procurement practices and regulatory knowledge, focusing on food quality, quantity, service for nutrient-dense and culturally rooted foods. She's really proud to influence the food system to one that is accessible and equitable. Tempest believes a relationship exists between food, nutrition, lifestyle behaviors, personal health outcomes, and health equity. Through this work, she works as a food strategist and an agent for change, dedicated to equitable access to real food for all people. So we're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Reverend Dr. Maturia Chase Williams.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Williams. She is no stranger to AME Zion. As an ordained elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, Reverend Dr. Williams serves as chair of district studies. In her local church, Shaw Temple, where both Dr. Williams and Tempest attend, she is the immediate past minister of congregational care and on the Sunday school's teaching staff. She's the 2024 recipient of the Sojourner Truth Award for the South Atlantic Episcopal District of the AME Zion Church. Amongst her accolades, she's past president of the 40,000-member Georgia Association of Educators. Dr. Williams spent most of her career as a high school English teacher, a school library media specialist, and coordinator of media services for Atlanta Public Schools. Throughout her career, she actively participated in her professional organizations and is a strong advocate for great public schools for all students. Now that she's retired, she's currently advocating for children as a member of the Interfaith Children's Movement of Metropolitan Atlanta and as the National Educational Task Force Chair of the African American Ministers Leadership. She received her bachelor's degree in English from Spelman College in Atlanta and master's degree in teaching from Trinity College in DC, master's degree in school library science, as well as a leadership certificate and doctorate of philosophy in instructional technology from Georgia State. And then in 2010, she received a master's in divinity degree with certification in Black Studies and Women's Studies at Candler School of Theology at Emory University. And you might be wondering what Reverend Dr. Williams has to say about nutrition, but hang tight as you will be pleasantly surprised. You'll hear her personal testimony after we first hear from our nutritionist, Tempest Harris Chance. So thank you, both of you, for joining us this evening. We're so happy to have you both on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So as far as the flow for today, we'll hear first from Mrs. Chance regarding her relationship and with nutrition, with food, lifestyle behaviors. She's going to expand on that. And then following her presentation, we'll hear from Reverend Williams. Please make sure you put your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll get to them after each separate presentation and again at the end. So without any further ado, we're going to turn now to Mrs. Chance.
Thank you. Okay, again, good evening, everyone. We're going to go over nutrition and not necessarily about weight management and which diet is the best, but about the nutrition of each, everyone's body and the cells, how it's going to benefit our body. So if you can go to the next slide. So as stated before, everyone's nutritional needs are different depending on the age, the gender, the health, the medical diagnosis. So today we're not going to explore what type of diet or what weight loss management is best, but particularly like food is medicine. Food is medicine for the body, and viewing it is that such a way. So again, we're not going to focus on which diet is the best and what's the trend, but exactly looking at food as medicine, right? And looking at food as a way to heal the cells in our body. So that we're going to make decisions for the inside, not the decisions for the outside, because if we make decisions from the inside, then the outside it will show on the outside. So eating healthy foods is, it's crucial because it provides essential nutrients for our bodies that needs function properly. The nutrients include vitamins, minerals, protein, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, consuming nutritious foods, supporting the cell growth and repair, and it helps maintain energy, balance, and boost the immune system. Go to the next slide, please. So our bodies are made up of organs, right? So it's your heart, it's your lungs, your organs, all of your body. But those organs are composed of tissue. So those tissues is making up the organs that's for your body. And there's the collections of those tissues is cells. So cells, a collection of those cells are tissues. And so when we look at it on a molecular level, like on that very smallest level, how do we make sure that those cells are getting what they need? What we consume, it's broken down to the smallest molecule. So why is it important and why is it essential that the health of the cells? Because it determines how the organs are going to function. It determines how the systems of the body will function properly. So if the cells of the heart are not in good health, then that heart is not going to do well. The cells of your lungs, of your liver, of your spleen, of your stomach, of your large intestine. So all the cells of the body needs to be in good health. And so what we should focus on feeding the cells, right? Like, so what does a cell need? And just like, God says our bodies are temples. The cells are the smallest part of that, right? So, and each cell is a house. Each cell has a door. Each cell has to be maintained. And so all the foods that we see around us, that we consume, that we buy, we have to remember that what we eat is there to help build our bodies. And so when we focus on feeding our cells, we're going to focus on the macronutrients, right? We're going to focus on the protein, the carbohydrates. We're going to focus on the fats and the proteins, like our meats, right? Our chicken, our fish. That is going to help with building the building blocks of like actually building the muscles. And we need muscles in our bodies so we can like walk and we can do physical activity, our daily activities. So protein is really important, right? Getting that protein in is going to actually help build the cells, and it's the building blocks, it's the amino acids of your body and the cells, right? And then there's also fats. So, people say, oh, let's stay away from the fats, but fats are actually good. Like you want to stay away from those saturated fats as much as 10%, as much as possible of your total calories, but you still want to be able to eat fats, right? And those healthy fats, like your avocados and those of your fish, as well as carbohydrates. And that's where the primary of your energy comes from. Now, of course, you don't want the simple carbohydrates. You want the complex carbohydrates where it's not easily broken down, like in those sugars and those, like a baked good of sugary baked goods. However, but each and every one of those are important. So from the protein, the fats, and the carbohydrates, those are all play a significant role of maintaining those cells in your bodies. Again, it goes from, a small cell to just those tissues and then to those organs to be like a system in your whole body to connecting to each other. And so the second thing we're going to focus on would be the minerals and your vitamins, right? And those minerals, they're maintaining those solid bones in your teeth, and they're repairing. So those are truly important. So like your calcium is important for your bones. And of course, just remember that calcium is not only it's from your dairy, right? And from your milk. And actually, certain types of or certain groups are more lactose intolerant than others. So just remember that calcium can come from a different variety of sources, such as broccoli, such as canned salmon, right? The bones in there is good for you. So just remember that calcium doesn't have to necessarily come from a dairy source of a cow, but it can come from other sources as well. And so that is a part, again, of the macronutrients. It is the minerals, right? And there's also the vitamins. So the vitamins that we need for normal cell function and growth and development. So and again, going back to fats, right? You see, I can't have that much fat, but again, fats are needed, right? The fats are needed because it's for our cellular membrane. It's there to help our body. And so one of the reasons is because vitamins, there's fat soluble vitamins. So that's A, D, E, K. They're all fat soluble vitamins. And so if your body does not have enough fat in it, right, say you're on a diet and you're eliminating the fat that you're intaking, and there's not much fat there, then those vitamins that you're consuming, the A, D, E, and K, they're not able to be absorbed. They're not able to do their job. So all of the micronutrients are very much important for each other to ensure that, hey, that the body is doing what it's supposed to do. And again, the cells need everything. God put all these nutrients here for us to have. The key thing is the balance of the moderation of it. Again, so fats are not big and scary. Neither is salt, right? Salt is not. It's a nutrient that is there, but again, being able to balance it out and ensuring that it is not too much, but not too less of it. Next slide, please. So monitoring. So we know what's going to build our cells up, right? We know that there's those macronutrients and there's micronutrients from your proteins, your carbohydrates, the fats, and then all of your the minerals and vitamins. But what should be monitored? And so that is the biggest portion, right? Because in the West, there's so many opportunities for that's around food, and there's so many different innovative ways to make it convenient. Everyone's so busy, and so what you'll see more is processed foods, right? Processed foods is everywhere. It's at their fast food restaurants, it's in the grocery stores, and so it's really important to understand that the processed foods think of it as food stuff, right? That like food stuff is not actually food; it's something that can be created in a factory, where you can't really create you can't really create a fruit and vegetable from a factory. It's going to be grown, even if it's a GMO, right? But so a food stuff is something that is created, that's chemically, that has been combined to make something it's a resemblance of a food. And so limiting processed foods is great, because again, it's not building up your cells. It's going into your body. It's providing calories, but it's not really building up the cells, right? It's more like can take away from cells, depending on the type of like chemical that is in there, type of additive that's in there. It's taken away from your cells. And also you want to limit refined sugars and saturated fats. And most likely in processed foods, you're going to find those refined sugars, those saturated fats, again, from your fast food restaurants, from your pizza, from your sugary baked goods. And just even talk about in the store where there's, you may have a product that says that, hey, this is healthy, but again, it may be healthy. It may have some of the minerals and the nutrients that you need in there. However, it may be heavily processed. And so just keep in mind that monitoring the processed foods, the refined sugar, the saturated fats is key, because those are not, it's building up your cells. It's pretty much tearing it down. So again, but they provide calories. However, not providing that benefit for the cellular restoration, right? Cellular rejuvenation, cellular growth. And so again, when you're making your health decisions when it comes to nutrition, think about the cellular growth. Think about the cellular health versus, is this healthy or not? Is it going to benefit the cells? Is it going to actually build the tissue that's in my heart, that's in my spleen, that's in my stomach? Is it going to build my bones up? So always keep that in mind. The checkout line, whether it's in the grocery store or it's at your favorite restaurant or you're at a concession stand. Next slide, please. So reading the food labels, that is so important. So of course, an apple is not going to have a food label on it because it's a whole natural food. A carrot's not going to have a food label on it. But those processed foods, those foods that has a combination of things put in there, it's going to have a food label on it. Now, to be clear, there are many, and we say processed foods, many foods are processed, right? But it's those highly processed foods, right? So, canned foods are processed foods, but it doesn't mean that, all canned foods are bad. So again, just going back, that processed foods can get many things that are kept processed. However, it's those highly processed foods. And so when you're reading the food label, you want to look at the back, and there's a chart that shows there's the percentage of fats and the percentage of sugars. But one of the most important parts is looking at the actual ingredients, right? What are the ingredients in the food? And usually the first three that's labeled is the highest amount, right? So just seeing what those ingredients are. So avoid manufacturer's ingredients and that has additives, that has many chemicals. And if you can't read it, right? If you can't read it, if you don't understand what it is, you don't know what it is, maybe it shouldn't be in your body, right? And so, or take it a step notch, look it up to see what is it derived from. But always look at the ingredients on the back of the label, and then looking for foods that is easy to read and understand. And then ingredients that are made from natural foods are better for you and easy to digest. Because think about it, how God made our bodies, right? Just an example of when a mom is breastfeeding. When a mom is breastfeeding, it is easier for that baby to digest the breast milk because he's already broken it down. So the toddler, the infant doesn't have to break down anymore. However, when it's drinking a formula, it has to do some breaking down. However, there are some situations where formula has to be used, but that's just an example. When there is a natural food source that God's made, it's easier for it to be broken down, and it's easier for it to go the path that it was supposed to go in your body. So when you think about those food stuff or processed, like these heavily processed foods, it's not broken down as easy, and it takes a while for it to break down. Your body's trying to figure out what to do with it, and it ends up either becoming waste, and it's just an empty calorie, right? It's not a nutrient dense food, right? So when you're eating foods, you want it to be nutrient dense. What it means, like, okay, I'm getting calories as well as I'm getting the nutrients from. I'm getting the vitamin A, vitamin C, I'm getting calcium, I'm getting magnesium, I'm getting some protein from. I'm not just getting the fats from it. I'm not just getting sugar from it and then calories, right? Because again, the goal is to feed the cells, not just getting calories. And so when you're looking at the back of the label, just ensuring that those cells are actually being fed with real food stuff and not just sugar, alcohols, high fructose corn syrup, BHT, carginosin, because some of these things have been linked, or have a strong correlation to some of the diseases that are prevalent today. And so again, just remembering to read the label and understand that, if you can't read it, then you may not need it. Now, of course, there's some things that are your favorites and you may not be able to totally divorce from. However, just keep in mind there may be a better option sometimes. For example, cream of mushrooms. There's a cream of mushrooms, and if you look at the Campbell's, there's so many ingredients in there. But if you look at the organic, There's like three in there. However, it does cost a little bit more to get that one. So depending on that time, I may get the one that's the organic, and then I may get the one that's Campbell's. But I know what I'm getting. I'm not always getting that, but it's just the knowledge is power, and you just choose to make that decision. But also, I wanted to remind you just inform you that when you see low fat on an item, don't necessarily assume or automatically assume that it's the best choice to make, right? Because low fat doesn't mean that it's the healthiest choice and it's the healthiest for your cell. More than likely, if it's low fat, that means that it's going to be that fat is taken out, but there is something else that's replaced back in there, like a high sugar content or high sodium content. Same thing with low sugar. If it's low sugar or if it's no sugar, it may be replaced with a sugar alcohol, maybe replaced with a higher fat content. So just remember that if it's saying low fat, low sugar, low sodium, because the food industry has to balance it out so it can still taste good, you just have to read it, because again, it's not just something that just like, oh, it's just low fat. No, it's something that's has been replaced. And it's just like, you look at the Diet Cokes, you look at the zero Cokes, looking at those, looking at the what's in there. Again, those have been linked to certain diseases such as cancer. So the best for that is, you can have the things that have fat in it, that has the sugar in it. It's the moderations of it. Instead of having that low fat, that low sugar, that low sodium, having the actual food product, and then just ensuring that you're not overindulging in those products. Next slide, please. So again, just as we review and going back to it, the health of the cell, the micronutrients and the macronutrients are very important, but limiting those highly processed foods, those redefined sugars, and also, understanding that the way that how we eat, has a lot to do with how our bodies have been broken down in comparison to other parts of the world, right? Like and if you look at some of the foods that are allowed here in the United States, they're not allowed in other parts of the world. They are actually some of the foods, the food ingredients, the food additives, the chemicals that are put in the foods here, they are banned in other parts of the world. So there's been talks of like the Mediterranean diet, how that's good for us, but I also want to put a spotlight on the African diaspora diet, right? Because that is something that looking at, if you're comparing and looking at the diet that's a traditional of African descent, you'll see those cuisines. They are actually healthy and they build the cells for the body, right? So you look at your yams and your plantains, they're high in the carbohydrates, high in fiber, higher in essential vitamins, right? That fiber from those plantains, those the original yams, right? Not the yams of the sweet potatoes, of course. And that story is that the slave, when they came here, they used something that was close to the yam, which was the sweet potatoes. But those potatoes are still prevalent, are still healthy, right? Because they have their vitamin A's in them, and they're, those oranges good for your body. But just going back to the yams and the plantains, they're high in those carbohydrates and that fiber. And so it's good for you, and benefits of the energy level and digestive, for your digestive health, as well as your whole grains like your millet. It's good for that fiber, that proteins, and the minerals, and has a significant role in your energy and preventing chronic diseases. And your legumes, your black-eyed peas, your lentils, the chickpeas, those are great sources of plant-based proteins, as well as, repairing the muscular repairing, and as well as looking at how, and for the traditional African, like how the stewing, the grilling, like those types of like cooking methods, right? Not a frying, but also just stewing, cookings, and that is great for us, as well as fermented foods like the probiotics. Now, probiotics are excellent for us, especially to be able to digest our foods, right? And so there are many things that are in the African aspect that focuses on that with fermented foods, as well as the herbs and your spices, your garlics, your onions, your turmerics. Those are wonderful again, for your cells, wonderful for keeping your immune system healthy. And then again, just those plant-based proteins. And so I guess I just encourage each and everyone to somehow incorporate some type of, I'm gonna go back, can't dismiss okra as well, but I encourage everyone to go and at least try to incorporate some of those African diaspora foods in your diet. Again, you hear about the Mediterranean diet, but again, we have a diet, and we have foods that came straight from the motherland that we can incorporate, that can influence and help the cells of your body. Next slide, please. And lastly, then something to consider is the water, right? Ensuring that we get enough water throughout the day, because most of the earth is made of the water. Most of our body is made of water. Most of our cells are made of water, so our bodies need water. We can actually go several days without food, but water, we need water. Like we can't go without water. As well as sleep. Sleep is a time when your body is able to fast and heal, and your cells are able to repair itself. So if you're lacking sleep, then your cells are not going to be able to rejuvenate and to be refreshed and to do the functions. It doesn't matter how well you eat, right? Because if you don't have sleep, if you don't have water, it's going to those cells are going to be broken down. And then as well as being able to be physically active is important too, to be able to continue to have that muscular health, as well as your portion sizes. Going back to earlier, you can have the fats. It doesn't have to be low fat, but it has to be balanced. Everything has to be balanced in moderation. And also, I just want to challenge and also encourage everyone to be a sustainable consumer. What does that mean? That the way we buy food affects the environment, right? If we're constantly buying foods that are out of season, that means that we're demanding the food system to bring foods from California and the truck to come, and for that diesel to go into the atmosphere. And we're also, if we're over consuming things, then we're wasting food. And so just keep in mind that climate control is real. And so the way we purchase and the way we eat also not only affects our cellular health, but it also affects the health of the environment.
Wow, wonderful. Tempest, thank you so much. I mean, you've given us such a great overview, and as well as some examples, some tips. And one thing that came to mind, as a pediatrician, I see young kids with health problems early on. There was just a study that came out of Spain looking at 3 to 6 year olds. And they saw that the more processed foods, just like you talked about, they ate, the higher their levels of their blood pressure, blood sugars, all early predictors of heart disease later on in life. So it starts early, just like you said to us today. So again, if you could share with us, give us examples of when you say processed foods, what is that?
So for example, if you're having again, going back, if you go to Publix have great cakes, and they have you look at and I love sweets, so it's not easy for me as well. But the one thing that I'll tell you, anytime I'll look at the ingredients. And if you look at like a chocolate for those of you who don't know, Publix is a grocery store on the East Coast. But if you look at that Publix cake, it has at least about 50 ingredients, right? Just for a cake, right? And so that's a processed foods. A ramen noodle, right? They're the 25 cents. That's processed. A Lunchable, that's processed. Depending on the cereal that you may buy, that can be heavily processed. So processed foods is, when you think about it, could it grow out the ground? It is something that God made, right? And so what was all included in that? That's how I think about it. I always tell my children and those I've taught before, who is the mother of that food, right? If you cannot give it a direct link, then it's somehow heavily processed.
Awesome. Thank you. We have lots of questions for you, so we'll come back to you, but thank you. You've given us an excellent overview, and I'm sure many of us will be rewatching this to get some tips. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, so now we're going to call Reverend Dr. Williams to the stage, and she will be sharing her testimony. So I'll stop right there and turn over to her. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
It's great to be here. Wanted to share with you my journey, how I am still becoming the better me, because I was overweight. But I just thought I was fluffy. I just thought I was okay. And I would get fighting mad if anyone ever said to me that I was fat. And so I just happened to run across a neighbor who invited me to an optimal health class instructed by Dr. Jennifer Rook. And they started talking about food. Next slide. In this class, when I was younger, I was tall, thin. I didn't take any medication. I could eat anything that I wanted. Next slide. But life happens. And as I began working and having children, I only had one child, but I had a stepdaughter, went through a divorce, and all the things that came with living ministry, but worst of all, a sedentary lifestyle and food. I ate anything that I felt tasted good, and I enjoyed my food. That was the one thing that I had, and it did not bode me well. Next slide. So, before whole food, plant-based lifestyle, and that is what I incorporate, I just eat plants and fruits. And I'm not against those who have other ways of eating, but this is just work for me. But if you would look at this slide, this was the bigger me. If you would look at me sitting on that stoop with my granddaughters, you will see an arm that looks like it's big as a turkey. I was wide at that gala. I was a size 20 before I embarked on eating whole food, plant-based. Next slide. But I knew that there was a thinner woman inside of me, and I wanted to get her out. And so I deliberately thought about what I had gone through. I'd had breast cancer 2 times. I had 2 total knee replacements. I had foot surgery. And I knew that all of those things had something to do partially because I was carrying too much weight on my body. So I wanted to change and tried many times before finally I was introduced to the whole food plant-based lifestyle. Next slide. I had hypertension, I had high cholesterol, I had GERD or acid reflux, I have AFib, atrial fibrillation, and I had ischemia. And ischemia is when your veins are gradually thinning, closing up because of fat in it. Next slide. I made a decision to change. It was January 2019. I was hospitalized with chest pains and eventually diagnosed with ischemia, as I've already explained to you what that is. And I decided then that something had to change. There had to be a difference in my lifestyle. So I removed all dairy, all meat, all processed foods as much as possible. And when I first started, I kept seafood, and I thought I was just really cooking on gas. I was doing good. No beef, no pork, no chicken. Seafood was cool. But now, if you know about the water systems and you know about the mercury and all of that, maybe that's not such a good choice unless you can get it wild caught and not farm raised. And so that was what I did. Next slide. Until I ran into my friend Gretchen, who told me about the Optimal Health Lifestyle Intervention Workshop. Gretchen invited me to the class, and I went to the class just hopeful, like it would be something like the Mediterranean diet, something that I could put my arms around and enjoy, but it would not be a sacrifice of things I love. I went to that meeting, and my favorite food is seafood. And they said, no seafood, no eggs, no oil. I said, what? I'm not doing that. No refined sugar. I said, I'm not doing that. But then what they did to hook me, at that time we were meeting in person. It was pre-COVID. And they would cook the food without using oil. They would cook it in front of us and then serve it. And the food tasted wonderful. And I changed from, I'm not doing this, to, I can do this. And I did. Next slide. But it's not just intake, as Dr. Bisolo has already said, and also Mrs. Chance. It is what you put in your body, but it is also how you take care of that temple. And so I committed to walking 5 days a week. I walk in the Cascade Springs Nature Preserve that's very close to my home. I walk 3.4 miles 5 days a week. What I love about this group is that we walk at our own pace. We have some that we call the explorers because they walk on the flat terrain and they walk about 2 miles. We have some that we call the strollers because they're only going to walk the parking lot or go to the waterfalls and come back. And then you have what we call the mountaineers. We go up the hill and we walk about 3.4 miles by the time we come back. I am a mountaineer. Next slide. So I realized that movement was important. And so I added in line dancing. I line dance with mind, body, and soul twice a week. I walk 3.4 miles 5 days a week. And I make sure that when I'm going out for groceries or I go to a mall or whatever I have to do, that I'm not looking for the closest parking lot when it's Saturday, so that I can still keep some steps going. So I am incorporating line dancing as well as walking. Next slide. I do yoga. I'm not the best at it, but I'm still trying to move my body, stretch my body, use and move muscle and tissue that ordinarily would not be moved if I was not doing that. Next slide. But my eating lifestyle is totally whole food, plant-based. That means that I rarely, if ever, eat anything out of a can or a jar. I buy fresh fruits every 2 or 3 and vegetables every 2 or 3 days. I eat grains. I eat beans. That's how I get my protein. And I eat lots of vegetables and fruits. And I found out it's all about flavor. It's all about deciding what seasonings you like, using those seasonings, and cooking the food like you enjoy it. Bake it, stir fry it. And that was the thing that blew me. I thought you had to have oil to stir fry or to saute anything, but you can use water or you can use vegetable broth. They both work amazingly well. And then you get more of the flavor of the food than you do when you use oil. Next slide. So the thinner me, I want you to know that in 1 year, I lost 57 pounds. I moved from a size 20 to a size 10. My balance is better. My oxidized cholesterol level is low now. I think it was, I can't remember the number now, but now it's 9. That's under 10. And the range is from 10 to 170. I'm off of all medication except a pill that I take because I have AFib, but I'm off my hypertension medication. I'm off of my blood thinner. And I'm just glad that 98% of the time I eat whole food, plant-based. Now, I love salty snacks. And sometimes I'm in gatherings where they have those potato chips. And I say, I'm not going to eat any. I'm not going to eat any. I'm not going to eat any. And then I eat a bag. Okay. So I'm not perfect. But that is an exception to the rule. I don't keep anything in my house that I know that I am not supposed to eat. And I have grandchildren. I have no popcorn that is bought in the store with all of the oil and the salt. I have no chips, and I make sure that what I do have, I don't have ice cream. What I do have in my house is healthy. I'm glad that I ran across, as I was walking one day in the neighborhood, a line dance group that is high energy. And so with walking 5 days and adding to 2 of those 5 days, line dancing for a couple of hours a day for those 2 days, I have just gotten to feel so much better about myself. You saw the first pictures. I look more like this now. I'm thinner. Like I said, I'm in a size 10, sometimes 12, depending on what it is. But it is my strong faith and my spiritual life and my commitment never to go back. As good as chicken smells when they're serving it on Sundays at my church, I don't eat it. Next slide. So my journey to wholeness is continuous. I told you that every now and then I'll eat a Lay's potato chip. I know that that is nothing but grease. There's nothing healthy about it. But that is the exception and not to the rule. I eat plants. I eat fruits. I eat beans for my protein. And I feel better. The fog in my old head has lifted. I can think clearly, I can move, and I am excited that I have decided that this way of eating is good for me, it's good for my grandchildren, it's good for my son, because they eat my way too. So that's my story. I am still talking to myself because I like things. It was nothing better to me than a barbecue rib. There was nothing better to me than fried chicken wings. There was nothing better to me than a pizza with every topping you could think of on it. But that was then. And now that is not the way I eat.
Amen. And like you have on there, to God be the glory. But thank you, thank you. You know what I really love about this conversation, and we can bring this Tempest back in as well, that both of you are just so inspirational. You are just so open and honest with us, and just your delivery just really easy for people to understand. So I truly hope that this will be replayed over and over in homes for families so everyone can listen to this. I'm going to continue to promote it. And I just want to say thank you. I'm going to ask you both some questions. I'll start with you, Dr. Williams, because you mentioned a lot about the fresh fruits and the vegetables and just being plant-based. What about costs? You know, a lot of people worry that eating healthy can be a little bit more expensive. So we'll start with you, Dr. Williams. What have you found to be the case?
I have found that that is not true. And sometimes it's where you shop, not how you shop. I know people would say about whole food, whole paycheck, because the cost for purchasing food at Whole Foods, and that's a store on the East Coast, I don't know if it's across the nation, can be very costly. But there are other places, like in my neighborhood. Well, it's really in the West End near my neighborhood. There is a Big Bear, and they have food there, fresh vegetables, and they're half the price as what you would pay if you went to Publix or Kroger or some of the chain grocery stores. So sometimes it's knowing where to shop. And also, I have not found it to be true that eating whole food plant-based is more expensive, because I try to stay away from canned foods. I do get canned tomato sauce. I'm not gonna make no comment. I could, but I'm honest. I'm a busy woman. I don't have time to make tomato sauce. So I do get things like tomato sauce in cans. If I can find it in a jar, I prefer to get it in a jar, because there is some research that says we get some metal in our bodies from canned products. And I want to live here well, I have 3 grandchildren, and my son started kind of late. So I want to see them finish college. And if I'm healthy, I might even live to see them graduate and get married. Might see that first great grandbaby. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes,
So I'm
it will.
mindful about walking and moving and keeping that mind wide open by not just socialization and reading and just dialoguing with others, because it takes all of that to keep you healthy. I try to laugh. That really is true. Laughter is medicine. I try to laugh. If I don't have anybody around, anyone in my home, then I'll look at some comedy, or I'll go on YouTube and find some old things that Whoopi Goldberg did or somebody, because I need to laugh. It is intentional. We're intentional about taking care of our children. We're intentional about paying our bills. We're intentional, if we're good stewards, tithing and going and having corporate worship. We need to be intentional about keeping our temples fit, solid, sound. It makes us happier.
Amen. Awesome. Awesome. That holistic viewpoint. Appreciate that. And Tempest, same thing with you. What are some tips or strategies to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into that weekly budget?
Yeah, and so I think, it also depends on the size of the family and the nutritional needs, because, growing teenagers, right, and children, they eat a lot. So I can be a witness that it is, it's in our household, it's a little bit more expensive. Every time I go to that, the checkout line, I was like, you're going to catch me if I faint. But some of the things, as you were saying, Dr. Williams, is that you not going to like a Publix or a Whole Foods all the time, but, exploring other places like a Aldi's, as well as like familiarizing yourself with a local farmer in your area, right? I mean, it seems like it's out the way, but they're around. You can use, your extension office, and in Georgia is UGA extension offices, and then there's the farm bureaus, and then you can just ask around. And then if you even also look at some of the products in the store, it'll tell you where they're sourced from. So you can contact them yourself. And so I've started to try to do that myself, is to try to like reach out to these farmers. Now you can go to the farmers market, but at the farmers market, the farmers are, depending on their audience or their consumer, they're going to upsell it for a little bit more. So you can, contact them directly, right? And they have some crops that they haven't sold and they want to sell it. And there are some farmers who grow for grocery stores, but the grocery stores, they want a certain type of fruit or vegetable, right? And so they're not going to be able to sell it to them if it's like a mark on it, but they can sell it to you. So there's all types of options. And there's also food hubs, right? Food hubs, they take a collection of farmers, right? In Atlanta, there's I forgot the name of it, but there's food hubs. And then there's also CSAs, which is also another collection of farmers that you can go. So there's many options. And again, going back to encouraging people to think about purchasing food a little bit different, because the consumer actually shapes the food system. And so the more we depend on the big box stores, the more that we don't have the local economy in our own hands, right? And then also another way that you can control your budget is planting something at your home, right? So planting, and you may not have a green thumb. It's okay. You can have some herbs, and herbs is not hard to plant, hard to grow. I've had a whole herb garden that I didn't tend to. It rained. It rained, and I had oregano, had thyme, had rosemary, just out the I did nothing but just walk past it and just picked it up, right? So those things can happen. Even if you are in a small space, you're in an apartment, you can have a little plant and it will literally grow. You can take a rosemary bush and put in a jar of water and then put it in the ground, it will just grow on its own. And so I think, just thinking about how we purchase food and how we get food, it doesn't have to be hard. And I also want to say that this whole way of like purchasing food doesn't, it doesn't have to be an immediate thing that you do, right? I don't always purchase the wholesome way or whatever, however, but I've taken the incremental changes. And so I just encourage everybody else to do that as well. So if you still have to purchase some, processed foods because that's your budget, don't feel bad about that, do as much as you can, because again, I also want to note that we live in the Western side of the world. So there's so many things that we're exposed to that we just got to take one thing at a time and not be get onto yourself if you were not able to eat this complete different way.
Exactly. I heard that from both of you. Just don't beat yourself up. Start with, small changes and then kind of progress. But Dr. Williams, you got me on that seafood though, because, for most of us, we think if we do seafood, we're doing a lot better. So let me, but you share with us just the benefits of that plant-based eating. Tell us, Dr. Williams, about food prepping, because it does take a lot, you know, when
So
you try to get that
that
together.
that is what they say. It takes a lot. But I have not found that to be, and maybe it's because of what I eat. But it's nothing for me to rinse off some spinach, chop it up, and saute it in some water or vegetable broth. In a few minutes, it's ready. I cook my rice, brown rice, in bulk, and I put it in little packets. So if I'm going to have spinach and brown rice, I take a packet of brown rice off in the morning and let it thaw out naturally in the sink, or the day before and let it thaw out overnight. And I cook, and your appetite will get tired if you cook a whole lot of food. Like I'll cook a big pot of beans, but I'm going to freeze most of it because your appetite will get tired. So what I try to do is have what I call a cook day, where I might cook two different kinds of pots of beans and put them in small glass containers. I'm purchasing glass, and freeze them in serving size. Or if I know that I'm going to have my children, I might do a bigger container for, because my grandchildren, I don't need to take out several smalls. I'll just take out like that. So I freeze food. I try to cook 2 or 3 different vegetables and swap them off, or add a salad and a vegetable. So you're not eating the same thing for 2 or 3 days. Now, my son comes in, he's a professional musician. He's out of the country or out of the city a lot of the times. But when he comes back, he stays with me. So I have to have food that, a hungry man is going to eat as well. He has adopted a whole food, plant-based life, because that's what I have. And
Sure.
he was a meat eater. So
Okay.
sometimes you find good health and ways to prep by doing it in bulk and having it in the refrigerator and pulling it out according to the number of people you are feeding, and freezing
Great
it.
ideas. Yes. No, those are some good tips. Some good tips. I wanted to turn now to Ms. Chance, because you talk a lot about, sauteing. Let's talk about seasonings a little bit. Tempest, if you could tell us a little bit about what are some healthier options for seasoning so you're not adding too much salt. And then we also have a question from the audience about what about pH alkaline water. They wanted to know your thoughts on that. So those are the 2 questions for you.
Okay. Yeah. So season is I love to season, and I don't use as much salt. Again, if you are not eating a lot of processed foods, right, then you don't have a lot of salt in your diet already. Again, salt is important because it's one of those trace minerals that got put there, and 2,300 milligrams a day is the recommended amount. And so, yes, it's not completely no salt, but again, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're already getting salt in your diet, so you don't need a lot of salt. But I use a lot of cumin, a lot of oregano, a lot of paprika, crushed peppers. I can't even think of all of them for right now. Turmeric, clove, ginger. I use a lot of different, and also like garlic. I use a lot of garlic. Oregano, like I said, rosemary, basil, coriander. Yeah. So I just season based on what I'm cooking, but I have a lot of seasoning. Like when I buy a seasoning, I buy 2 or 3 tubes at a time. And usually you can go to the farmer's market if you have one in your local, and they sell them like in the big containers that you can use. And it's a better option to get. So it gives the food flavor, right? So you don't really need that much salt, because especially if you're eating like the fruits and vegetables with the seasoning, it goes well with it. So, and of course, and then salt, of course, what does salt do? It dries it up. It takes the water out of it. So you don't need that much salt.
Right. Exactly. No, thank you. Thank you. And giving us options of where to get those seasonings as well, how to make it flavorful, because otherwise, as families, we probably won't eat unless it's flavorful. What about that water, though, the pH alkaline water? Someone was asking, what are your thoughts on that?
Yep. So heat alkaline water is good for you, especially for your digestive system. And your gut health is really important. Like how are things being digested? Because that's actually where like your body's the sign at the end of your stomach is it going to be used for like the nutrients for your cells, or is it going to be wasted? And so a lot of times our gut health may not be as in good shape. That's why I was saying earlier, ensuring that, especially at the end of the night, you can do like something that's like a probiotic to help that digestive system. But alkaline water is good for that. And it's especially also when to keep you like when you're sick. So alkaline water is something that I have incorporated into our household. Don't buy it all the time, but I do try to drink it.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. It's almost time to end. I don't want to, for this to end. I would love to continue, but I'm going to ask for both of you, just give us a 30-second closing remark. We have a few announcements after that, but I'll start with you, Dr. Williams. Just 30 seconds.
Well, I would like to say that my life has changed because I have embraced a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. It's all about the flavor, what you enjoy, the seasoning that you enjoy, incorporate it in the food, cook it different ways, eat and enjoy. Take your time to chew your food, relax and savor it. And you will find that you can be just as satisfied with a portobello mushroom as you were with a steak.
Wow. And I said I wasn't going to ask, but I must ask you this. What did your doctor say when they saw you, when you came back in? Because, we don't know a lot about how to do this, right? Okay.
Well, it depended on who the doctor was, but they were very pleased at my size and my vital signs. I was on 7 medications, and now I'm just on, I have AFib. So I'm just on one heart medication. That's stuff, my vitamin B12. That's all I take. And I have energy. I am the one, like I told you, that walks 3.4 5 days a week and line dance for 2 hours for 2 days a week. So God is good for a 77-year-old woman.
Amen. Amen. And Tempest, let's have you give us your closing remarks. Thank you.
Just be gentle with yourself, right? But also remember your cells. And not only if you have a family, if you have those around you that you're feeding, think about their cells as well when you're purchasing, you're buying food. And the United States is one of the obese countries but it's lacking nutrients, like it's malnourished. So it's like you have this side where we're obese, but we're also lacking the nutrients. And so in order to have those nutrients, we have to make those choices at the grocery stores or at the farmer's market. And then when we're cooking and what we're deciding to purchase. And so having those whole foods and having those fruits and vegetables to be able to put in our system, and all those things that helps your helps your cells, So just remembering that, because that is what's going to help you. And again, just be gentle with yourself, because again, there's so many other things in this country that could not do well for your body, but we can only do one thing at a time. And also think about the earth, because we need it.
That's right. That's right. And both of you have received a lot of accolades in the chat. I don't know if you're able to see them. Yes, this conversation, you can play it back on AMEZ TV on demand starting tomorrow morning. If you're on Facebook and you're following it, you can actually replay it not long after. So this has been wonderful. We're having other spices put in there. But we want to also invite all of you who are attending the Quadrennial General Conference in Greensboro. So we're going to have a health fair on Friday, July 26th. We'll have discussions about women's health, managing chronic diseases like diabetes, preventing cancers. There'll be free blood pressure and glucose screenings. And we will have cooking demonstrations, plant-based cooking demonstrations there. We'll also have free exercise classes Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning. So we invite you to attend, come out and learn more. Again, please share this conversation tonight with family and friends. We really want to thank our panelists, Reverend Dr. Maturia Williams, Tempest Harris-Chance, for being with us tonight. We have thoroughly enjoyed your conversation, and you're changing lives. So we appreciate you both for helping to change lives and change mindsets. Also wanted to thank our host, Brother Darren Kent for having us on tonight and for helping us moderate and get through this. And again, just thank you all so, so much. We appreciate
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.